Well, hello, Iowa. How are you? It is wonderful to be on the soapbox. It is wonderful to be back at, how about this Iowa State Fair, everybody? Is this place amazing? Karen and I are going to be here the next couple of days. We're looking so forward to it. She's going to be headed over tomorrow. I think you're going to go see the bees, the honeybees.
I want to go see the bees. I want to see the art exhibits. Yeah, and maybe if you have bunnies, I'd like to see the bunnies.
Okay, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go to the livestock barn. I want to see some horses. And I am here to see the butter cow. But listen, we're delighted to be with you. I'm going to share a few thoughts, but I just couldn't resist the opportunity asking her to come up here. She's a Marine Corps mom. She spent 30 years as an elementary school teacher, and I think she was the best second lady the United States of America has ever had. Would you join me in thanking my wife, Karen Pence, for her service to the country? Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for letting me be a part of this great tradition. Let me share a few things with you today. First off, I'm Mike Pence. I'm from Indiana, and I'm running for President of the United States. I want to tell you a little bit about who we are, about why I'm running, and why I'm so confident about the future of this country. First off, who we are. You know, one of the things I've learned since I left the White House was that I'm well known, but I don't know if I'm known well. You know, people mostly know me as your vice president, but before that, you may not know, I was governor of the great state of Indiana, a place a whole lot like Iowa. And we've got at least 2 Hoosiers here. That's a good start. Somebody did tell me the other day, they said, I get the feeling you got a little bias for states that start in I and end with A. And that may well be true. Before I was governor of the state of Indiana, I had the great privilege of serving in the Congress of the United States. I served for 12 years. I was in leadership the year that we retired Nancy Pelosi the first time, and I couldn't be more glad we retired Nancy Pelosi once and for all. But really, my story began much longer before that. You know, I grew up in a small town in southern Indiana. 3 brothers, 2 sisters. My mom, who's 90 years young, is a precocious first-generation Irish-American. Her father immigrated to this country. She married a fast-talking salesman from the south side of Chicago. One of the few things my dad and I ever disagreed on was he was a White Sox fan. I'm a Cub fan. But my family basically lived the American dream. I mean, my mom and dad built everything that matters, a family, a business, and a good name. And my dad had served this country in uniform, and he always told us as we were growing up that to whom much is given, much will be required. And so for my 3 brothers and 2 sisters, we were always told it was important to give back. And so for me, the calling of my life from very early on was public service. The greatest dream I ever had was to be the congressman from my hometown, but you can imagine what a privilege it was for me to be the governor of my home state. And let me just thank the people of Iowa. Thank you for the privilege of serving as your vice president. It was the greatest honor of my life. But I have to tell you, we moved home to Indiana after we left the White House. We bought 5 acres and a pond. I got a Ford pickup truck. I got a John Deere riding mower. I'll tell you, our life was pretty good. 3 granddaughters to the good after the last 2 years. And I got to tell you, when I look at everything that's happened to this country, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm running. I mean, the truth is, Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. And I believe every one of us that has the ability to lead, to bring this country back to the conservative principles that have always made America strong and prosperous and free, need to step forward. And that's why, after much prayer and deliberation, my wife and I made the decision to seek the Republican nomination for President of the United States, because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I mean, when you look at what the Biden administration has done in just 2.5 short years, is truly remarkable. I mean, that gusher of spending in Washington, D.C. launched the worst inflation in 40 years. The war on energy caused gasoline prices to go up. They just jumped up again last week. Those open border policies on the southern border have created the worst border crisis in American history. And we look at a crime wave in our major cities, and I don't have to tell you about the steady assault on our liberties and our values that seems to pour out of the American left and out of this administration. I'm running for president of the United States because I think we're better than this. I think the American people know we're better than this. And with the right leadership in the White House and in state houses across the country and in the Congress of the United States, we're going to bring America all the way back, faster than you could ever imagine, I promise you. So that's who I am. That's why I'm running. But let me tell you why I'm confident. You know, in all my years as your vice president and in my years in public service, I'll be honest with you, my opinion of the federal government never went up. But my opinion of the American people went up every single year. You know, I remember when that derecho rolled through Iowa, when hurricanes struck the coast of Texas and hit Florida, when the wildfires were burning in California. You know, we flew out to those places. We spent time with relief workers and first responders. And, you know, you show up at a place where there's a natural disaster or worse, a disaster of human making. And the only thing you can't find in those neighborhoods is a parking spot. Because when bad times come, the American people literally pile tools and food and bottles of water in their trucks and in their cars and their minivan, and they race somewhere to find someone that they'd never met before and will never see again and help them rebuild their lives. I'm going to tell you something. The American people are the most generous, idealistic, faith-filled, freedom-loving people the world has ever known. We just need government as good as our people again, and I intend to go get it for us. So I have faith. I have faith in the American people, and I truly do believe that better days are coming. But everything starts in Iowa. We all know that, don't we? And that's the reason that we're here. This isn't our first time, is it, Karen, at the Iowa State Fair? We've had a corn dog or two, a lemon shake-up before. We look forward to being here, spending the next couple of days here. But I just want to encourage all the people of Iowa to do what you always do. That is, give careful consideration to the choice that you will make on January 15th. I stand before you today because I know we need new leadership in the White House, but I also believe we need new leadership in the Republican Party. I believe we need leadership that will stay grounded on the timeless conservative principles that have always made this country great and have led our movement to victories over the last 50 years. I believe America is the leader of the free world, the arsenal of democracy, and that America needs to continue to lead on the world stage, and that America is safer when we do. I believe in fiscal responsibility and balanced federal budgets and low taxes and economic growth. And let me say from my heart of hearts, with gratitude to your state legislature and to your great Governor Kim Reynolds, I believe in the sanctity of human life, and if I'm your president, we'll be a champion for the right to life from the Oval Office. The truth is that some of the people that will stand on this soapbox have a different view on those issues. But that's why we have debates. And that's why you all count the votes in the caucus. But I just ask you to think carefully and reflect on what it'll take to bring this country back, what it'll take to provide the kind of leadership that has the capacity to maybe bring the American people together. You know, I believe that the American people not only long for us to return to conservative principles, but they also long for us to restore a threshold of civility in public life. You know, I got to tell you, I always remind people when you get 15 miles out of Washington, D.C., the people in this country actually get along pretty well. I mean, here in Iowa, back in Indiana, we know how to talk to people that are different, right? Have different opinions, even across the Thanksgiving table, don't we? And I got to tell you, when I look at the widening dangers in the world, when I look at the debt crisis facing our children and grandchildren, when I look at the assault on our values and our principles and our liberties, now more than ever, we need leadership that can summon the better angels of our nation and invite the American people to come together to meet that future together. And I'll do it, I promise you. And finally, lastly, I stand before you today confident because I have faith. You know, our nation was founded on a principle, maybe with one exception, unique in all of human history. It was the idea that we get our rights not from kings or thrones, not from governments or even from charters, that our founders believed that we were endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And I believe with all of my heart that God is not done with America yet, and that if we will but turn our hearts back to Him, if we'll avail of ourselves of that wellspring of support that has seen Americans through much more divided times than we could ever imagine, then I know with His help and with the great leadership of the people here in Iowa, the best days for the greatest nation on earth are yet to come. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to the Des Moines, Iowa Soapbox and the Iowa State Fair, and God bless you all. Now, I got a few minutes for questions, and I'd love to take a few. If they're really hard questions, I'm going to ask Karen to come back on stage. Yes, sir.
Is there a Democrat that you think you can't beat?
Is there a Democrat that I think I can't beat? No. Look, I think the American people know what's going on. I mean, everywhere I go, I've never seen the level of frustration and concern. But I'm also confident that that's going to turn into energy on Election Day. I believe we raise up the right standard bearer that will steer our party and our nation back to those timeless conservative principles without apology. I truly do believe we could have an election that would not just be a victory, but it could literally change the course of the country back to what we've always known makes America strong and true and free. Next, yes, sir, Boston.
My question is this: why did you commit treason on January 6th and not Shut your mouth!
Well, that's a fair question. Look, come on, people. That's why I came. No, I got you. I'll answer your question. I'll answer your question. Look, let me take you to January 20th, 2017. I put my left hand on Ronald Reagan's Bible, and I raised my right hand, and I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And it ended with a prayer. So help me God. My son, who's a captain in the United States Marine Corps, reminded me one time that it's the exact same oath that he took. It was a promise I made to the American people. It was a promise I made to Almighty God. Now, I know you might have a different impression about what my duties and responsibilities were on January 6th, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. The truth is that states conduct our elections. They do. And once Iowa certifies the elections, when there are questions, you can go to court. Our campaign in 2020 had more than 60 lawsuits in courts around the country. There were also states that conducted recounts under the law. But when all that was done, if you read Article 2 of the Constitution, which I recommend to you very respectfully, Article 2 says once the states send their electoral votes to the Congress of the United States, the Vice President, as President of the Senate, will preside over a joint session of Congress. And what it says is at that joint session, the electoral votes shall be opened and shall be counted. It doesn't say may. It doesn't say you can send them back to the states. It doesn't say you can reject votes. even though my former running mate and many of his outside lawyers told me that that authority was there, I knew there never was. I mean, look, there's almost no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could pick the American president. I mean, the American presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And I'll always believe, by God's grace, I did my duty that day. I truly believe it. And it's among the reasons I step forward today, because I truly do believe that people deserve to know that on that day, the former president asked me to choose him over my oath to the Constitution. I chose the Constitution, and I always will. Yes, sir.
Because the president's limited to 2 terms, is there any possibility we can get something done about Congress and Senate? And why can't there be term limits? We shouldn't have these guys in there for life. The president can only be in there for 2 terms. Why not the Congress and Senate?
Yeah, he's asking, the president can only serve 2 terms. Why don't we have term limits for those guys on Capitol Hill? Let me tell you, I voluntarily left Congress after 12 years because I think 2 terms in the Senate and 6 in the House is enough for any American. I support term limits, and I always will. The Congress of the United States ought to have a steady flow of people. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule. You got a couple here in Iowa that I adore. But you know, the thing about people in public life is just because you're out of this office, voters can still put you in another one, right? But I think the turnover is a healthy thing. And frankly, it was 30 years ago I wrote the chapter of a book. You can look it up. I'm not just telling you what you want to hear. I wrote a chapter in a book supporting term limits, and I always will. Hey, how about in the way back? Let me see if I can hear you.
How has life treated you since Tucker Carlson ruined your career?
You know, I had a very sporty debate with that former talk show host from Fox. And I will tell you, you know, when some people put out a video from that cut off the back half of my answer, I simply tweeted the whole 3 minutes and said, you know, we used to call that fake news. Look, there's a lot of talk about Ukraine and U.S. support in Ukraine, and I know old Tucker's been against U.S. support there from the very beginning. But let me tell you something. I've met Vladimir Putin. Anybody that thinks Vladimir Putin's going to stop if he overruns Ukraine has got another think coming. If Vladimir Putin overruns Ukraine, it's not going to be too long before he crosses a border of a NATO country where we're going to have to send our men and women in uniform to fight. I stand on the Reagan doctrine. It says if you're willing to fight our enemies on your soil with your soldiers, we're going to give you the means to fight them there so we don't have to fight them somewhere else. This is about America's national interest, and they can parse all the videos they want, but you all can go check it out and you can see the truth. Yes, sir.
You mentioned you're a Cubs fan. Any chance that you'll become a Cardinals fan instead?
He's asking me, as a Cub fan, and I used to be a Bud man. If there was any chance, oh, you got the jam? Thank you very much. That is, as my kids would say, that's my jam. Thank you. Is there any chance I'd be a St. Louis Cardinals fan? There is still time. Let me tell you, I'll meet you. What, are you giving me more of that? Thank you. I signed his hat, and we're like best friends. Let me tell you, I'll go to a game with you, but Karen and I, Wrigley is a place we've been many times as a family, and we love it. And I'll stand there, but that's a great program. It really is. How about one more? I got 1 minute. Yes, sir.
I'm a full-breed Canadian, and I've come here in this country many years ago, and I appreciate being here.
Yeah.
But I got to carry a card in my wallet 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I get stopped by the law, I have to tell them I'm a Canadian, but I'm also living here
Yeah.
as an American citizen.
Right.
What about the other side? I come here and I pay my dues, I pay my taxes, and I pay for my Social Security here in this country, and I love being in this country, by the way. It's awesome. But I see what's happening on the other side of the border. Totally wrong.
Well, let me tell you, here's a Canadian who's made America home. We're glad you're here. We really are. And thank you for coming here legally and staying here legally. I mean, look, I'll leave you with that, folks. If I become president of the United States, we're going to secure the southern border of the United States of America. We're going to finish the wall. We're going to put Remain in Mexico that I negotiated on behalf of the president with the Mexicans. And let me also promise all of you, my grandfather came to this country in 1923. Richard Michael Cawley got off the boat on Ellis Island. That's how Michael Richard Pence got to become vice president of the United States. I promise you, if you give me the opportunity to be your president, we're not just going to secure that border, but we're going to fix this broken immigration system once and for all, and we're going to design it in a way that benefits the American people. So help me God. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming to the Soapbox. Karen and I look forward to meeting you all.